So the devs over at jacktostudios were kind enough to gift me a review copy of Night of the Dead, and I gotta say, I was pleasantly surprised. So what is Night of the Dead? Night of the Dead is a single-player or co-op zombie survival, crafting, base building, tower defense game on Steam, currently listed at $24.99. It came out on August 28th, 2020, and is in early access. If I had to describe it simply, it's a newer third-person version of 7 Days to Die with its own twist. On my first playthrough, I spent about 5 hours running around the open world and completing the quests the game lays out in front of you, which went a little something like this. So, first pointer I'll give anybody trying this game out, don't start on the hardest difficulty. And so, once you're finished crying, you'll start crafting simple tools, and eventually get to a point where you're going to have a small base, as well as some zombie killing devices designed to protect you and your valuables from the horde that comes every night. The game has a pretty well laid out gameplay loop for the player to get used to, and honestly does a much better job of setting you up for success than 7 Days does. You gather resources, craft items and shelter, explore out in the world once you've used up said resources, then return to your base at night to try to survive the zombie horde. Sound familiar? It is, but here's what I think Night of the Dead does better than 7 Days to Die. The details. First, for an early access game, there are some cool details that I was definitely not expecting. When you gather a resource, you use your attack button as opposed to using it like an item, and the game does a good job of giving you feedback both in the crosshair and in the details on the model to let you know you're hitting a gatherable resource. You can see the leaves getting chopped off of a bush or chunks of wood missing from the tree before the model collapses on itself. While it does look a little weird, it at least is there. You spend a good amount of time in these games gathering, so it is nice to see they put attention into the details. The second way I think this game separates itself from 7 Days to Die is the nightly hordes and the tower defense system. The traps are pretty ridiculous, but honestly, they are just plain fun. Watching a zombie get knocked out by a giant swinging spike ball, or getting smashed by spikes, or getting chopped up by a gigantic lawnmower blade that's flipped upside down is pretty satisfying. Night of the Dead embraces the silliness of its tower defense system and allows for some pretty crazy setups. Each night has more and more zombies, so it gives you an objective to plan for after surviving, and adds a little tension knowing you need to prepare for the next night. The third way I believe this game shines above 7 Days is in the combat and exploration. The melee combat still leaves something to be desired, but shooting with a bow and arrow feels leagues better than it does in 7 Days to Die. You can draw the bow pretty quickly, and the game runs smoothly enough that the aim feels good. As long as you don't crank the difficulty too high, fighting zombies and exploring the open world was more enjoyable from a technical standpoint than 7 Days was. I believe it is a good foundation to start on. With that being said, the loot doesn't respawn, and from everything I've gathered, others claim it takes around 40 hours of determined gaming to clear the map, so while there is plenty to chew on here, it does fall short of the procedurally generated maps of 7 Days to Die in terms of endgame. Being early access, it's hard to say if there's more planned to extend the game, or if the endgame is working as intended, but I really hope they do plan on adding more there. Now, not all of my impressions of this game are positive. The animations in the game are pretty stiff and odd looking, and while the performance on the high end is surprisingly good, it does suffer from random frame drops and stuttering. Oh, and the character customization is very much lacking. You're pretty much just this chick with some different clothes you find along the way. The tricky thing about reviewing an early access game is that it's difficult to predict what will or won't make it into the final version, so it's hard to critique the game when you aren't sure if something is a flaw or just not completed yet. With that being said, I believe that Night of the Dead has a very good starting foundation with everything that I have tried. I think in its current state, a 7 Days to Die veteran would very much enjoy the time spent in this game, but likely would be left wanting more out of the end game. That isn't entirely a bad thing either, because that means that what is there is worth playing. So, what's the verdict? Night of the Dead certainly has the making of a 7 Days to Die killer, but I don't think it's there yet. However, I believe it has a better starting foundation, and if the game is properly supported, I could easily see this becoming a better overall product over time. If you're a fan of zombie survival games or a fan of tower defense games, I think it would be easy to get enjoyment out of Night of the Dead, even as it is. It has a surprising amount of detail for an early access game, and was much better than I thought it was going to be. Thank you so much for watching. I hope I was able to answer any questions you had about the game, and if you have any specific questions that you think I can answer, leave a message in the comments down below. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe to get more gaming content, and make sure you hit the bell to get notifications as soon as my videos go live. Take it easy, everyone. Peace.